Are you concerned or confused about the new National Association of Realtor regulations? New commission rules could mean big savings for you, or it could mean big losses. Watch as I uncover the 5 pitfalls that could have you overpaying in today's market with these new regulations when it comes to closing costs and commissions when you sell your home. The new National Association of Realtors regulations and the settlement of a $1 billion lawsuit which settled for $418 million is going to change the industry forever and ever. This will impact the sellers, the buyers, and the realtors. Just to briefly give you an idea, the whole lawsuit was about how the commissions were paid to the brokers and how the brokers were using commissions to sell homes or the way they showed homes to the buyers. The Department of Justice alleged that the very rules realtors were required to follow for decades resulted in collusion, creating artificially high real estate commissions and higher real estate prices. Most of the real estate industry, including myself, adamantly disagree with these allegations, but NAR agreed to settle to put an end to the lawsuit and limit the liability of many of its members. So when you consider selling your home, the first thing you have to know as a seller is what was the commission regulations about. You have to understand that, so when you do list your home and talking to a realtor who wants to list your property, you know how to command what you want, understand what you want, and agree on how much you will pay or not pay. So basically the first rule, the major change, is that when a buyer's agent wants to show a home to the buyer and the buyer's agent have to sign a buyer-broker agreement. It has to be in writing that, hey, I'm the buyer's agent. I'm going to show the buyer a house or a few homes for a week to 10 days to up to 90 days. The second thing they have to agree on in writing before they write the offer is that how much commission is the buyer going to pay the buyer's agent. Yes, I said that correctly. How much commission is the buyer going to pay to the buyer's agent? Because part of the lawsuit was that the sellers used to, quote, advertise in the multiple listing service how much commission they will pay to the buyer's agent, whether it was 2%, 2.5%, 3%, or a flat fee. And the lawsuit alleges that the buyer's agent showed homes to their potential buyers based on the commissions. So that is going to be gone. Starting August 17th, buyer's agent can no longer see how much commission they are paid. They can only get paid what the buyers agreed to pay them. Just so that you understand, just because the buyer is responsible to pay the buyer's agent the commission does not mean that you cannot pay. The second thing the sellers have to be assured is that make sure you negotiate your commissions and anything you're going to pay upfront when you are listing the property. So typically, until now, or at least until August 17th, a typical seller would list a property, let's say it's 6%, although that is negotiable. So typically, when the sellers agreed to pay 6% to their broker, which is the selling agent or the listing agent typically kept 3%, and then they gave the buyer's agent or the buyer's broker 3%, and they shared 3%. Moving on, you cannot do that. You have to list your property as a seller and decide, hey, I'm going to pay my seller's agent, which is the listing agent, let's say 2.5% or 3%, but there is no regards on how much you are going to pay the buyer's agent. But you could decide upfront and let your seller's agent know that, hey, if an offer comes in, I'm willing to pay 2% or 3% or a flat fee. So that's something you have to agree in writing. The other thing that is very critical moving on is when you list a property, you are agreeing to pay your listing agent, let's say 3%. But there's another item that's brand new, is that if your seller's agent, or in this case your listing agent, finds a buyer who does not have a buyer-broker agreement with another broker, which we call an unrepresented buyer, the seller has to agree with the listing agent that you are going to pay the listing agent 3% for listing the property, marketing the property, negotiating, doing everything. On top of that, you agree to pay your listing agent 1%, 2%, 3%, etc. if the buyer is unrepresented. So that's something you have to discuss up front. The other thing also you have to discuss is if you are willing to pay closing cost or repair cost, how much you are going to pay. That is from now on will be called a concession. the concession amount the buyer's agent will be able to see in the multiple listing service if the listing agent puts it in there. So at least they know when they show homes that, hey, this seller is willing to pay $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 or 3% of the purchase price into closing cost or seller cost, or that could be used as commission. But they cannot call it commissions. They can only call it concessions. Yes, things are drastically changing. This is completely new territory. We are not sure, although we have been trained, we've been studying, we've been talking to a lot of brokers, other groups of realtors, experts. So one of the things you may want to assure before you list a property with your listing agent, be assured that he or she is skilled, is experienced, is up to date on the new NAR regulations and commission regulations, so that when you sell your property, when you pay commissions, and when you sign those disclosures, you don't get into trouble and pay extra cost in fines or liabilities or end up in the court. So to ensure that you work with a top agent, experienced agent, an agent who is up to date on all these, feel free to contact me. I have a database of top agents and updated agents throughout the nation, and I can refer you one that can help you or answer any questions or give you any resources. I will put the link in the first comment of this video. The third thing you may want to do is evaluate the value of the buyer's agent. Now, as you may know, there are listing agents. These are the agents that help come up with the price, come up with the marketing plan, come up with the timing. They will let you know what to stage in the house or what to prepare for the house for sale. And they work exclusively for the sellers in preparing the home, marketing the home, and closing the transaction. Then there are the buyer's agent. These are mostly buyers who work with these buyers. They look for properties, they talk to the buyers, they have them talk to the lenders, and they search properties in the specific areas that the buyers want with the specific criteria that they have, whether they want a single-story home, they want a pool home, they want it in a certain school district, they want it near a hospital, and they find out if there's a matching home, talk to the seller's agent, and then show them. So those are the buyer's agent. 90% of all the agents out there are buyer's agents. 10% list most of the homes according to the statistics from NAR. So when you do get an offer, you may want to inquire with your realtor, your listing agent, and find out how skilled is the buyer's agent, how experienced is the buyer's agent, has he filled out the disclosures and the commission rules and regulations, has he or she signed the buyer's broker agreement with the commissions, with the new regulations. Those days are gone now where a buyer comes in the open house, looks at the house, goes home, call his mom or brother or anybody that they know, whether they're experienced or not experienced, and they write up the offer, not knowing everything. And this does happen. It has happened a lot. I've dealt with those buyers where if I'm the seller's agent, we deal with these kind of agents. They sell 1 or 2 homes a year. They're not up to date on the negotiating techniques, on the communication techniques, on the disclosures, on the trends. Yet we have to do all the work. So there are buyers out there. So if you're going to pay the buyer's commission, make sure that the transaction is going to close before you accept anything. Look at all the disclosures, all the paperwork, and check out the credibility of the buyer's agent. It's very critical. You check out the credibility of the listing agent when you list your home. Why not, moving on, check out the credibility of the buyer's agent? Because if the buyer's agent does not perform, the transaction will not close and you will waste your time 30 days, 45 days and become frustrated and not have a closed deal. While you are checking out the buyer's value, what he brings to the table, you may also want to look at the offer and see what terms and conditions they are offering. Do they want closing cost? Do they want lender fees? Do they want repairs? What are they asking for on top of the commission, which the buyers now have to pay the buyer's agent, but now they're asking you to pay all of that because the whole industry has changed. So this is new territory. The fourth thing that you have to consider, and this is very critical in selling your home at the price you want, in the time you want, and the terms and condition you want, is that you have to do 2 things. One, offer commission to your listing agent, whether it's 3%, 2%, 1%, or a flat fee, and then offer them the unrepresented buyer commission. So that's 2 commissions you're offering to your listing agent. A buyer's agent brings you a buyer. Then you want to talk and have a conversation and have something in writing that if an offer comes in, I'm willing to pay the buyer's agent X amount of dollars, whether it's 3%, 2%, or a flat fee. So you know upfront what your costs are going to be. And before you even put your home on the market, you want to go through a net sheet or estimated net sheet. It shows you that if you sell your home for $400,000 and if you pay your listing agent 2% commission, and if you pay closing cost of $5,000, and after you pay off your mortgage, you remain with X amount of dollars. So you want to know that upfront. At the same time, you also want to have another net sheet showing that you're going to pay to the listing agent the commissions, you're going to have transfer fees, escrow fees. Now you add the buyer's commission that you're going to pay and see what you end up with. So when you list a home for sale, have a thorough understanding in writing and have an understanding with your listing agent of how you're going to pay the commissions to the buyer's agent and the listing agent once the offer comes in. That's very critical because after all, you're selling your home, you want to make a profit. Maybe you want to buy a bigger home or a smaller home or move on with your life. It's all about the profit. It has always been, it will always be. But at the same time, you have to be practical and you have to be negotiable. You have to be willing to pay your listing agent and of course to the buyer's agent as well. Before I give you the fifth point, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Mike Patel from Anaheim Hills, California. And I would like to hear from you what's happening in your neighborhood, in your local area, or what do you think the commissions will affect with this new settlement? Please drop a comment below and share with us your thoughts, your opinions, or your projections on where the real estate market is headed. We will really appreciate it with your comments. Comment below. The fifth item, also very critical, is that once you decide with your listing agent, once you decide how much you're going to pay your listing agent and how much you're going to pay the buyer's agent, if you are going to pay, there are other costs and there are other hidden fees that the buyer's agent may bring onto the table. So let's look at that. If you look at this chart, which is an estimated net sheet for the seller. So in this chart, we are going to assume that you're going to sell your house for $400,000. And we're going to assume that your commission that you're going to pay your listing agent is 2.5%. If your listing agent is your buyer's agent, and we're going to call him a selling agent in this, you're going to decide to pay 1.5%. You can see where it's written here. That comes up to $16,000. Then you have other fees. You have your escrow settlement fees, your title policies, your lender fees. In certain states, you have attorneys or transaction coordinators, things like that. You have home warranty. All that adds up. Before you sign the contract, you need to know what the costs are going to be so that you end up with a net amount. As you can see, the estimated seller's net sheet in this case is $178,735, assuming you are paying 4% commission to your listing agent and the buyer's agent. In this case, your listing agent is also the buyer's agent. And also, I'm assuming that there's a loan amount that you owe on your house of $200,000. So this is what you end up with of a total of $178,000. But the buyer may come in and ask you for more closing costs. He may ask you for $7,000 in closing costs or $8,000 in closing costs. Let's look at that in the next chart. So here's the same chart that I'm going to show you. I showed you the selling price was $400,000. And if you look at the commissions here, listing agent commission is 2.5%. And let's assume your listing agent does not bring a buyer. So you're not paying him anything, which is zero. So in this case, your commission at 2.5% is going to be $10,000. But if you look on the left-hand side where it says concessions, you have agreed to pay concessions amount of $10,000 to the buyer's side. Now, whether the buyer is going to use that as seller's closing cost or lender fees or appraisal fees, or he's going to use that to pay his buyer's agent, regardless, we're not sure what he or she is going to do. And let's assume that the first loan is $200,000 that you owe. So now your net amount is $174,735. So it's not a big change where your listing agent brought the own buyer. But let's assume further that now you paid your listing agent 2.5% commission, as it shows here $10,000. But the buyer's agent or another buyer's agent brought you the offer and he's asking for 2%. And the buyer is also asking for $10,000 because let's assume that he's an FHA buyer or buyer with not enough down payment. So he's asking for $10,000 in closing cost, lender fees, appraisal fees, because he can barely come up with the money for the down payment. So he's asking for $10,000 Plus the buyer's agent is going to ask you for another $10,000, which is another 10,000 or 2%, let's say $8,000. So now if the buyer's agent, and if you're going to pay additional 2% to the buyer's agent, your net will drop from $174,000 to probably $166,000. So there's a big drop. So before you sign a contract or accept a contract, go through all the fees. So there's no hidden fees that you're not aware of, you and your listing agent is not aware of, so that when you open escrow and you have 30 days to close or 45 days to close, you know exactly how much you're going to get and be prepared to move and buy your next home if you're buying the next home or whatever you want to do with the money. As I mentioned to you earlier, everything is changing. Real estate industry will no longer be the same as it has been for the last 100 years. Let's see what happens. On the other hand, if you are considering selling, you may want to watch this video where I talk about the costly mistakes to avoid when you are updating your home to prepare to sell your home. So check this out. Thanks for watching my video. Sell smart so you can gain more.